Hi, I'm Ranger Rhonda, and normally I would be welcoming you to Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but today is just a little bit different. This is a video series where we'll be exploring natural spaces right where the Smokies park rangers, park staff, and park partners live. So I invite you, come enjoy an outdoor experience with us in this episode of Smokies at Home. Hi, I'm Ranger Rhonda from Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I want to welcome you to my home. I'm out exploring some of the natural spaces around my home with my exploring partner here. We're out just kind of noticing things and exploring, and I noticed one of my trees here around my house. It felt like it was trying to tell me a story, and I thought, well, who doesn't like a good story? And so I thought I'd bring you along with me, tell you the story of the Eastern Hemlock. Like any good story, though, you've got to have a good, strong main character, and that is our Eastern Hemlock. It's a tall-growing evergreen. It likes it near waterways at the lower elevations. Sometimes people even refer to it as the redwood of the East. Now, as our main character, though, it is a story of survival for the Eastern Hemlock. Now, what is challenging its survival? Well, that is our villain of the story, our antagonist. And that antagonist is a small aphid-like species called the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid. Now, it is a non-native exotic insect that has been brought into this area here in the southern Appalachians from outside of the area. And now it has a story of survival as well, but it is challenging the story and the survival of our Eastern Hemlock. This is a branch from the Eastern Hemlock that I told you was trying to tell me a story. And if you look at this branch right here, it looks like it's telling a very healthy, a very happy story. You can see that light green there. Those are new needles that are growing in from this season. So it looks very, very healthy. But if you move over to the branch that is right next door, just adjacent to that very healthy one, you can see we've got a different thing going on here. There is no new growth on it whatsoever, and if you look at the base of the needles, you can see a white substance there. That white substance, that's the indicator that I've got an infestation on this tree of the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid. If I flip that branch over, you can see it very clearly, and that's not actually the adelgid that we're seeing there. Those white pockets are actually an encasement of the adelgid's secretion. Now, I know that sounds gross, and yes, you did hear right. It is its own secretion that it's hiding within. Now, adaptations on most living things are about survival, and like I said earlier, the adelgid has its own story of survival, and so those secretions are an adaptation for its own protection. It protects it. It's a waxy substance that it hides within. It hides it and protects it from other predators. But it also protects it, unfortunately for me and my Eastern Hemlock, it also protects it from pesticides. So it is securely hidden within its own secretions there, where it is feeding off of the Eastern Hemlock. It has a very long mouthpiece, a sucking mouthpiece that it pierces inside the branch and actually pierces into the vascular system of the Eastern Hemlock. Now that I've introduced you to our two main characters, the Eastern Hemlock and the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid, let's go ahead and gather back on my back porch. We'll get into the plot, the thick of the plot, where we can look at and discuss the how and the why this tiny insect can take down and is threatening the large Eastern Hemlock tree. While we were on the trail examining the infested hemlock branch. I briefly mentioned that the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid feeds on the branch. Now that may not sound like a very big deal, but it is. It is the main reason why the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid is such a threat to the Eastern Hemlock tree. We've got a simple activity though that will help us to understand that just a little bit better. The activity sheet is found on the Smokies at Home website. You can print it up and look at it, or you can just follow along with the video. Either way, it's super simple. It is all you need is a few simple things that you'll probably easily find around your home. We're going to start out with a small glass of water. Then we're going to have a straw. Now this can be a paper straw or a plastic straw, whichever one you have around your house. The activity sheet though, I had to alter it just a little bit because I did not have a push pin. The activity sheet calls for a push pin or a thumbtack. I didn't have that, but what I do have is a safety pin. And so if you don't have a thumbtack, don't worry about it. Maybe you've got a straight pin or a safety pin laying around. It works as well. And each one of these items is going to represent a portion or a part in the feeding between and the interaction between the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid and the Eastern Hemlock tree. The nutrients are our glass of water, so you can think of this as your soil and your nutrients within the soil. You can think of the straw as being the branch on a Eastern Hemlock tree. An Eastern Hemlock tree, and then you can think of the straight pin or the safety pin as the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid itself. And so, but we're not going to bring him into the play just yet because you're a healthy hemlock tree, and so we're going to act like a healthy hemlock tree. And so what I want you to do is I want you to take your glass of soil and nutrients, and I want you to put your branch into the soil and nutrients, and I want you to take a small sip. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw up the nutrients from the soil up your branch. But while you're doing that, I want you to pay attention to the amount of force that it takes for you to actually draw the nutrients up from the soil. Okay? Have you noted that? If you didn't notice it the first time, do it again, noticing the force. Now, we have had Hemlock Woolly Adelgid arrive on scene. Now, I did mention that this is a non-native exotic insect. And so how does it get here? It can be dispersed. It's a very small insect, and it can be dispersed either by the wind or on birds. But the most common way that they come into a new area is riding along or hitchhiking along on other agricultural goods like firewood. So if you're visiting the Smokies or if you're going camping in another area from outside of where you live, make sure that you buy that firewood locally and help us out, because you never know what is hitchhiking on your firewood when you bring it from outside of our area. So we have a Hemlock Woolly Adelgid that has arrived here in the Smokies on a piece of firewood, and it needs to survive as well, just like the hemlock tree does. And so it finds a hemlock tree, and it takes its long sucking mouthpiece and it pierces it into the branch of the hemlock tree. And so go ahead and do that. Take your pen and poke a hole into your straw, or your branch, excuse me. And so now go ahead and take the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid out and put your branch back into your soil and your nutrients. And now, using the same force as you did when you were healthy, I want you to draw up some of the nutrients again up through your branch. Did the amount of nutrients change, or was it the same? Now we're going to do it again. We've had another Hemlock Woolly Adelgid arrive on scene, but honestly, it doesn't even have to be another Hemlock Woolly Adelgid, because the reproductive system of the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid is crazy. If you have one female, a female can actually clone herself and lay 300 eggs twice a year. So a single female can reproduce 600 times, producing 600 more Hemlock Woolly Adelgids. She's reproduced, she has cloned herself, and we have another of her cloned self at our hemlock. And so we're going to poke another hole because it needs to feed as well. So you now have 2 holes in your branch. And so we're going to try that again. So I want you to take your branch, put it back into your nutrients, and using the same force, draw up the nutrients through the branch. I'm going to ask you the same question. Did the amount of nutrients change again? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to continue this activity and poking a hole into your branch with every time, and then sticking the branch back into your nutrients, and see how many holes it takes before using the same force before you can't get any nutrients up from your soil. Okay, it's like I said, super simple, but it really does example the process that is going on between the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid and the Eastern Hemlock. Because every time the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid pokes another hole into the branch, it interrupts the vascular system of the Eastern Hemlock. It can no longer draw nutrients and soil, or nutrients and water up from the soil, and it can no longer, which is through the the part of the vascular system is called the xylem, and it can no longer bring down the sugars in food from the leaves in the phloem. And so it totally disrupts the flow of nutrients throughout the tree, and the tree literally starves to death. So unless I actually do some sort of treatment for the hemlocks here around my home, my story and the story of my hemlocks will end in a tragedy. It is not isolated to the hemlocks here around my house. It is a problem that is having to be dealt with here along the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountain chain all the way up the East Coast. So if you want to learn more about how private land managers and public land managers are dealing with the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid, by all means go to the smokies.org website. On the activity sheet that we have supplied for you, there are some more resources, as well as the official site of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And you can see how park managers are dealing with the issue of the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid currently. Well, that's it for this time around. We will be, I'm sure, back with you exploring more. So for now, take care, and I hope to see you again real soon.